There are some new units in this chapter, and they have to do with pressure. They're in this left box over here. So these units are for pressure, P, pressure. For the equation we're going to be using, we want to be putting things into ATMs for at least one of the equations. And the other one, you don't have to do a lot of converting. And so all of these are equal to 1 ATM. So 1 ATM equals this many kilopascals, or this many pascals, or this many bar. They all are equal to 1 ATM. This may be the one you're the most familiar with from filling up the tires on your car. You probably use more to something like 40 pounds per square inch, or maybe 35 PSIs, but that's a unit that comes up a lot in the automotive industry. So the pressure units that we're going to use over here on the left, it'd be something simple like convert 910 millimeters of mercury to ATM. And honestly, you just do it the same way we've been doing all the other unit conversions. On the bottom, you do millimeters of mercury, and on the top, you turn it into ATMs. And so over here in 1 ATM, there are 760 millimeters of mercury. And now our millimeters of mercury will cancel out. And we'll bring our calculator over here. So we have 910 divided by 760, and you get 1.19. And we have, looks like 2 sig figs, so we're going to change that to 1.2 ATM. So we exist on the world, like what's really comfortable to us is 1 ATM of pressure. So around the 1 ATM is going to be kind of normal. When you're dealing with weather, you're probably used to this millimeters of mercury right here. And 760 is like normal pressure. So if something's at high pressure, it's going to be higher than 760. And if it's at low pressure, it'll be lower than 760. So here's another one. Convert 40 PSI to ATM. And again, we just put PSI on the bottom, ATM on the top. And so we know that there are 14.7 PSI in 1 ATM. So 40 divided by 14.7 gives us 2. And it looks like this one just has 1 sig fig. So 2.721, if we were only going to do 1 sig fig, that would be 3 ATM. That's probably a little silly to do so few sig figs, but. And then here 115 kilopascals. And so then we'll see in 1 ATM there are 101.325 kilopascals. And so we will have 115 divided by 101.325, 1.134 ATMs. And this has 3 sig figs, so I would round it to 1.13. So the conversions, as long as you know that everything's equal to 1 ATM right there, then, and you have a chart like this handy for yourself, then you can get between the different pressure units. The most common ones that you will see in this chapter are probably going to be the millimeters of mercury, PSIs, torrs. Those are probably the 3 most common. Quick note on the right, we already talked about how to get between different temperature units. You also want to remember this was talked about quite a bit in the chapter about molarity. But if you know that something is 365 milliliters, a nice shortcut is just to know that your decimal moves 3 places and to go ahead and just write that as 365 liters. Or you can set it up with the factor label method, 365 milliliters. And then in 1 milliliter, there's 1 times 10 to the minus 3rd liters. But you will need to be making sure that everything's unit is in liters in this chapter. And you might get milliliters. And then one more reminder, there is a term called a mole in this chapter. Don't forget that it's equal to this many, and that's Avogadro, either molecules or atoms. So don't forget that. And also don't forget that it's equal to your periodic chart grams. So if you have something like this and you're doing hydrogen and it says 1.01, if it's H2, a molar mass means 2.02 grams are equal to 1 mole. And in this chapter, the equations that you'll be using will have you converting things into 1 moles. So maybe instead of giving you the mole, they might say, oh, we have 16 grams of hydrogen. So the equation requires mole. And so like you've been doing all of this time, grams of hydrogen into 1 mole of hydrogen. And we just do 16 divided by 2.02, and that will give us 7.92 moles of hydrogen. So don't forget that also. These two, they're not new ideas, but just don't forget how to do those.